A baby iguana is being lifted out of the Jamaican forest. Not injured, not lost, moved, because if it stays here too small, it may never survive long enough to become part of the forest again. This is a Jamaican iguana. For decades, many people believed it had disappeared. Then, a few survivors were found in the limestone forests of the Hellshire hills, but finding them did not solve the problem. The forest was no longer the forest they had evolved for. A new predator was already there, small, fast, active by day, opportunistic, and almost impossible to remove. This is a story about conservation. After a mistake cannot be undone. How do you save a species in an ecosystem already invaded? To understand that, we have to go back to the sugar fields of the 19th century. In Jamaica, sugar was more than a crop. For generations, it shaped the island's economy, land use, and countryside. By the late 1800s, that economy was under pressure. Hurricanes and market shocks hit the island. Producers like Cuba were expanding. By the 1880s, Jamaican sugar output was far below its earlier peak. So when rats damaged cane fields, every lost stock added pressure to a decline in business. In 1872, William Bancroft Espert imported small Indian mongooses. The idea looked simple. Rats damage cane, mongooses eat rats, so mongooses should protect sugar. 9 animals. A few individuals released into an island ecosystem. At first it seemed to work. Fewer rats were reported. The mongoose was praised as a useful answer to a costly problem. That early success helped the idea spread. The mistake did not look like a mistake. It looked like proof, but ecology does not run on first impressions. It runs on timing, behavior, food webs, and consequences. Here is the first bug. Mongooses are mainly active during the day. Rats are mostly active at night, so the animal brought in to hunt rats was awake when many rats were hidden. Mongooses did kill some rats, but on a tropical island full of easier prey, they did not need to specialize. They became what generalist predators often become on islands, a pressure applied everywhere. Bird eggs, nestlings, lizards, frogs, small reptiles. Anything exposed, slow, or nesting on the ground now faced a new rule of survival. The mongoose did not simply take an empty niche. It rewired the island's food web around a new predator. On islands, that matters more than almost anywhere else. An island is small enough for ecological change to spread quickly, but isolated enough that escape is difficult. The sea works like a geo-barrier, protecting unique species from outside competitors for millions of years. But once humans carry an invader across that barrier, the same sea can trap native species with it. A predator does not need to conquer a continent, it only needs to push one small population below the point where it can replace itself. Before the mongoose, many Jamaican species had evolved without a small, fast, daytime mammal moving through the forest floor. Some had weak fear responses. Some nested in exposed places. Some depended on eggs and hatchlings that were easy targets. So the mongoose changed which animals could reproduce safely. And the Jamaican iguana was one of those it pushed toward the edge. For much of the 20th century, the iguana was feared extinct. It survived only as a remnant in the Hellshire hills, a dry forest of limestone, thorny vegetation, heat, and very limited nesting soil. By the time conservationists found it, the mongoose was not the only pressure. Feral cats, dogs, wild pigs threatening nests, charcoal burning and land clearing degrading what remained of the dry forest. These pressures had accumulated through settlement, farming, hunting, and development. By the time the iguana was rediscovered, Jamaica had 2 problems at once: an invasive predator that could not be removed at island scale, and a last surviving population trapped in one fragile forest. Trying to fix Jamaica all at once would have been too broad, too expensive, and too slow. So conservationists changed the scale of the fight. They focused on the one place where the iguana still had a chance: the Hellshire Hills. The strategy had three parts: protect the nests, control predators locally, raise young iguanas until they are large enough to survive. The third action is called headstarting. Young iguanas are protected when they are most vulnerable. Some are brought to the Hope Zoo in Kingston, where they grow past the size at which mongooses can easily kill them. Then they are released back into the wild. Not a return to untouched wilderness, a human-built bridge across the most dangerous stage of an animal's life. And it worked. Not perfectly, not forever, but enough to change the ending. By 2024, more than 700 Jamaican iguanas had been released back into the Hellshire Hills. The species is still critically endangered. Predators remain. Every release depends on field teams, traps, and long-term discipline, but the difference between extinct and still here is enormous. Why save the iguana at all? The Jamaican iguana is one of the largest native land animals left in Jamaica. Like other rock iguanas, it eats leaves, flowers, and fruits, then deposits seeds elsewhere as it moves. In a dry island forest, that matters. Seed dispersal helps plants reach open patches and regenerate after disturbance. Losing the iguana would not only mean losing one species, it could weaken the recovery capacity of the dry forest itself. Fewer large herbivores move in seeds, fewer chances for native plants to establish, less ecological function in a system already under pressure. That is why the iguana became more than a rescued animal. It became a living test of whether the Hellshire Hills still had a future. This is the real debug. The first intervention treated the ecosystem like a machine with one faulty part: rats. But the mongoose didn't behave like a tool. It behaved like an animal. It found easier prey. It spread. It reproduced. It moved beyond the cane fields, and the island reorganized around it. The modern solution had to ask a better question. Not, what animal can kill the pest? But which life stage is failing, and how do we protect it? For the iguana, the failing point was recruitment. Adults could survive, but eggs and hatchlings were exposed. If juveniles never reached maturity, the population could not rebuild. Headstarting addressed that bottleneck. Predator control reduced pressure at the nest. Habitat protection gave the population somewhere to persist. Captive insurance reduced the risk that one disaster could erase the last genetic line. It is not glamorous. Trap, monitor, raise, release, track, repeat. But in conservation, repetition can be the difference between a species becoming a memory and a species becoming a population again. This pattern appears on islands around the world. The pink pigeon in Mauritius fell to fewer than 10 wild birds in the early 1990s and recovered into the hundreds through captive breeding, habitat restoration, and predator control. New Zealand's black robin reached 5 individuals in 1980 and exists today in the hundreds because conservationists protected each breeding pair with precision. In both cases, recovery came not from a single action, but from identifying the exact point where the system was failing, and holding it there long enough for the population to rebuild. The lesson is not that nature should always be left alone. Bad intervention ignores complexity. Good intervention studies it. The mongoose is still in Jamaica. The iguana is still vulnerable, but it is also still alive. A baby iguana lifted from the forest is a sign that the old ecosystem is gone, but the future is not closed. That hatchling is too vulnerable for the world humans created, so humans built a passage through that vulnerability. They did not erase the mistake. They found the bottleneck. And that is what they debugged. Sometimes restoration does not begin with removing every problem. Sometimes it begins with saving the one species that proves the system is not finished yet.